All right. May 16th. So we're talking about the tongue as it is something that can do a lot of damage. So St. Ambrose said, bind up your speech lest you fall into excess or impurity. Be more restricted. Let your shores be contained. A river which overflows collects mud. So he's using, St. Ambrose was great for, he was of the Alexandrian school of interpretation, as opposed to the Antiochian school of interpretation. I don't know if you know the difference between those two. The Alexandrian school was founded by Origen, and he was he interpreted all of sacred scripture in a symbolical way. So everything in sacred scripture is a symbol of something else. And so St. Ambrose was definitely in that. That's one reason why he's hard to understand, because you don't know exactly what he's trying to get at with his symbols. See, so he's giving a symbol there, the river that overflows. So, whereas St. John Chrysostom was Antiochian, that is very factual and analytical about just what the sacred scripture means, and St. John Chrysostom and others. St. Gregory was Alexandrian. St. Gregory the Great. There's always symbols. St. Augustine was sort of half and half. Most of the time he was Antiochian, but once in a while he gets into the symbols. Right, like the numbers, and this represents this and that and this and that. So just so you know, everybody has a style. That's St. Ambrose. But he also has a Latin that is very difficult. He uses a lot of words that you don't ordinarily see in Latin. So Book of Proverbs, chapter 10, verse 14, the mouth of the fool is next to confusion. Those who talk a lot want to be seen as intellectuals. That's not Proverbs. But the commentary is that those who talk a lot want to be seen as intellectuals and experts. Typically, they sound off. They talk about everything. They are the doctors of everything. So nobody really takes them seriously. But they are in fact seen by other people as vain, light-headed, and often as liars. They exaggerate or they make up stories. The typical pathological liar. Pathological liar is not, he's someone that actually believes, in a way, what he's saying as the false thing that he's saying. He can't help himself. He just makes up stories. And he doesn't see the difference between it and reality. That's the pathological liar. See, other people are liars that they know perfectly well that they're lying. But the pathological liar just has a habit of saying something that will fit the situation. So often they are. And so people who talk a lot have a bad reputation. And this is, again, very important for the priesthood. You shouldn't be somebody that is too loose with your tongue. You should be totally in control of your tongue. Ecclesiasticus 20, chapter 20, verse 5, he is hateful who is bold in speech. St. Bernard of Clairvaux said, let no one take lightly the time that is consumed in idle conversations. An idle conversation is a conversation about something stupid or light or has really no purpose. You're just talking. It's not to say that every conversation has to be necessarily about the circumcisions of the Trinity, but it means idleness in your conversation. Talking when you're on planes, you hear usually teenage girls involved in idle conversation, where it's about the stupidest things in the whole world. And they repeat the word like after about every 3 words. And I'm like, and you're like, and I like had my hair done, and so forth. That I just go crazy when I hear that. I just explode. But they're talking amongst each other, and they're talking about very light and stupid things, like somebody's dyeing her hair, or that's idle conversation. So hopefully you're not talking about that stuff. But the you could get into idle conversation. I would say speaking excessively about sports is idle conversation. It's one thing to say who won the game. It's another thing to say, well, this one was really great. And, this one is, that's idle conversation. For it is this is St. Bernard, it is the acceptable time, it is the day of salvation. So he's saying that time should be used profitably for your salvation. The irrevocable word flies away, and so does irrevocable time. See, time never comes back to you. And the point that he's making is that time should be used profitably. St. Alphonsus took a vow never to waste time, because time is given to us here for working out our eternal salvation. And everything that we do, even recreations, etc., should be wise. It should be toward our eternal salvation, should be able to be justified in God's eyes. We should always be doing what we should be doing. The foolish man, he says, pays no attention to what he is losing. So he spends time doing a lot of silly and stupid things. He goes on, it is permitted to converse, this is the foolish man, it is permitted to converse in order to pass the time. St. Bernard is bringing up that objection. So he replies, until the hour passes, until time passes. His response, the mercy of the Creator has given you this time to do penance, to obtain mercy, to acquire grace, to merit glory, to pass the time in which you should have appeased the divine goodness, should have hastened to the company of angels. In which you should have hastened to the company of angels, in which you should have desired the heritage which has been lost, should have hoped for the promise of happiness, the promised happiness, should have enlivened a failing will, should have wept over the iniquities which you have committed. That is the proper use of time, according to St. Bernard of Clairvaux. So the idea of killing time, as we say in English, passing time for no reason, is something that he is railing against. Time should be used profitably always. So that's true, especially when you're a priest. There's some free time. It'd be good to use that for spiritual reading or reading of sacred theology or church history, or you should always be learning. There's so much you have to know. You have to defend so much today. So much church history you should know. It's good to be able to call on those things in church history to defend the faith. Teachings of popes, so that you can easily defend the faith. There's much more that you have to know in this context that we're living in now than you had to know 75, 100 years ago. If you knew the basics of your theology and canon law and moral theology, etc., you were fine. No one would ask you any more questions. I mean, you might have to explain to a Protestant why he shouldn't be a Protestant. But the amount of knowledge that you had to call upon in those days was less than half than what you have to call upon today. So you have to, there's a defense that has to be mounted on all sides, not only against the modernists, but also against the other traditionalists who are attacking you for your positions. So you have to defend all of that. So you have to know a lot, and you should learn a lot. Don't waste time. When you get to my age, you think, oh, all the things you wanted to do and didn't get done. You only have a few more years left. But when you're your age, you probably have a lot of years left. And so you should use that time correctly. St. Gregory the Great said, the origin of discord is the incontinence of the tongue. And that's so true. If people would just keep their mouths shut, you wouldn't have discord. Discord arises from people talking things up and not keeping problems to themselves. And it's the natural effect of it. St. James chapter 3, verses 5 to 10 says, the tongue is indeed a little member and boasteth great things. Behold, how small a fire enkindleth a great wood, meaning a great forest. And most of those big forest fires are done by small fires, either people that are careless in putting out their fires, or by wires that fall down in storms, and just a single spark will set off the whole thing if it's dry. It used to be when people smoked more, just throwing a cigarette out in California, most of Northern California is covered with this dry grass. Very nice looking golden California. But it burns up. So people would throw a cigarette out and then the whole field would go up. And the tongue, he says, St. James, is a fire, a world of iniquity. The tongue is placed among the members which defileth the whole body, and inflameth the wheel of our nativity, being set on fire by hell. He continues, for every nature of beasts and of birds and of serpents and of the rest is tamed and hath been tamed by the nature of man. But the tongue no man can tame, an unquiet evil full of deadly poison. By it we bless God and the Father. By it we curse men who are made after the likeness of God. Out of the same mouth proceedeth blessing and cursing. My brethren, these things ought not so to be. St. James. St. Bernard of Clairvaux, he says, a word is a small thing because it flies out with lightness, but it wounds gravely. And then he goes on in Latin, because you have graviter as verse to light. It moves lightly, but it burns badly. It lightly penetrates the mind, but it does not easily exit, and that's true. You see, somebody might retain something that you said for years and years and years. Some nasty thing you said, some indiscreet thing that you said, or something you revealed that you should not have revealed. Somebody might retain that for years and years. Things that husband and wife say to each other sometimes is very hurtful, and when they fight, all husband and wife, almost all husbands and wives fight from time to time. And they say things that are not very nice, and so that injures, it injures the relationship over time. And the ladies, remember, you said this 10 years ago. Very common. 10 years ago, you said this to me. And so they don't give up. They don't forget easily. So it moves lightly, but it burns badly. It does not easily exit the mind. It is pronounced lightly, but it is not lightly revoked. So you can never take it back. Once it's out, you cannot take it back. It's done. It's out. It circulates lightly and easily offends charity. So you can begin a rumor. And that, as I said, for priests, you must be very, very careful. This is bad enough for lay people, but for priests, very careful about what you say. You have to weigh. Anytime it's sensitive, you have to weigh it very carefully before you say it. When in doubt, don't say it. St. James, but the tongue no man can tame, an unquiet evil full of deadly poison. I think we saw that. Think of all the evils done by speech. For example, all of the leftist propaganda. Today, speech is everywhere with the media. See how the world has been corrupted by leftist propaganda, or the corruption of the youth in schools. That's all by speech. That's why we have the world we live in. That's youth are corrupted by speech. It incites anger and hatred. See, so you can work people up by a speech. Look at Adolf Hitler. His whole success was in his manner of speaking. I mean, he was a corporal in the German army. He used to run as a messenger on the front lines. He got wounded, went to the hospital, and that was the end of his military career. And before that, he was an impoverished artist in Vienna. Living in a slum in Vienna. I mean, he was not anybody, he was not a prominent person in any respect. But he had the gift of gab. He could give a very moving speech. If you see any of those newsreels, I mean, he's like a maniac, but he's working up the German people who are complaining about just about everything. With reason. There's the Versailles Treaty, which humiliated Germany and put a terrible burden on them. The economic situation, the liberalism of the Weimar Republic. There was a lot of things to complain about. Something like this country too. A lot of problems, and about Germany especially. And so he those two things met. His ability to speak and I'd say the hunger of the people to hear it. And that was fatal. That was it. So you can do a lot of damage by speaking, and you can do a lot of good by speaking too. You destroy reputations by talking. It is talking improperly encourages the commission of sins and crimes. So you can encourage people to do something wrong. It's a weapon. What you say, your own speech. So it's something that especially priests have to be careful of. All right.